Guys, welcome to Think Fast, where I'm flipping my hair around because I don't know what the is going on with my hair today. But I'm having a fun hair day, is what I like to call it. How is your day today, and how is your view, Suchita?
Look at you kicking off our show with an expletive, which is going to be beeped out. By the way, what is this thing that has happened in the past week that you did not tell me about, Mr. Dugirala?
What happened in the last week? I not tell you about. What is happening?
Let me give you a hint. Jadoo?
Jadoo?
Oh
Oh,
my God.
what Jadoo?
Sasta Hrithik Roshan. Oh my God, this was amazing. So, ladies
Arey
and
yaar.
gents, also Think Fast fans, you guys are in my heart and in my soul because you guys make fun of Varun significantly, which is basically making my life and my job easier. But as it turns out, Varun did some SpawnCon for LinkedIn India's Instagram channel, and there were a lot of comments on that SpawnCon saying, "Are you a Sassa Hrithik Roshan?" And one of you guys tagged
Yeah,
me
man.
in it.
I was at Meta's Creator Day yesterday, and Jalasmi was there as well with me. And a couple of these creators came up and saying, "Oh my God, you look like Hrithik Roshan." And I'm like, "Oh, guys, can you please stop this?"
Oh
But
my
I'm just taking
God.
this as a compliment. I'm taking this as a compliment, and
Ladies and gents,
as long as
we
I
need
age
to
that well,
curb Varun's like ego, not,
the hair
like
needs to grow
give
longer
more fuel.
and the
Oh
muscles need to
my
get
God.
harder.
But how do you how do you feel being called a cheap version of Hrithik Roshan?
It's okay, yeah, it's okay. I feel he and I connect on an intellectual level maybe at some point, but
Of
let's see
course,
where
so
this kind of goes.
intellectual.
Yes, this is a random thing that started on Twitter, by the way. This is not just like on that video. It happened randomly because
Oh my God,
I'm
is
going to
this
call
like
him what
Arbaz
Manish
Khan
Pandey,
and that other
the
guy?
Guruji of most creators on the Indian interwebs today. Manish Pandey started this, and he's saying Varun Dugal. He started tagging Hrithik on stuff as a
Oh
joke
my God.
on
We
Twitter. So
should
this
do this,
started
man.
there.
We should like the same way you like school me about Roger Federer and Arbaz Khan. We should start a similar thread of you and Hrithik Roshan
Varun Dugal,
and
Hrithik
Jen.
Roshan. I'm actually not complaining about that comparison at all. I mean, like that's fine. I mean, I've been called worse. Someone's called
Neither
me
is
Kumar
Arbaz
Gaurav. I'm
Khan.
like that didn't make any sense.
I don't know who Kumar Gaurav is, but in any case, jumping right into all things business, tech, and
Yes,
brands.
yes.
What happened this week, man?
First of all, if anybody hasn't seen it, please go check out the Tesla announcement. It is super exciting and super creepy at the same time. Tesla launched their prototype humanoid Optimus Robo. If you remember last year's announcement, they basically had one human inside a suit which looked like a robo who walked onto stage and suddenly started dancing. And it was a bit of a joke that they did, saying, "No, we haven't made it yet. We have plans for it, but we just want to like kind of do a thing with the audience." And but this year, the actual robo came out, walked around, waved hi. They showed a bunch of test videos where it did one singular task, like this robot's job is to water the plants. That robot
Hmm.
sees the can, picks up, goes, waters the plants, does that synchronized action and stuff like that, or like boxes in a factory. He plans to make, he as in Elon Musk plans to make millions of units, pricing it around $20,000 or below is what he said. And so yeah, so but it looked eerily like the robos in iRobo. So I don't know what that means for the future, but it's coming. Alright, robo
But
is
wait
coming.
one second. I have a quick question. What does this robot do?
It just is singular task which see you can buy this robo, keep it at home, and have it do tasks for you.
But like what? Like
Like
robo,
water your
get me
plants,
coffee. Oh,
wa-
acha, like that.
water your plants, get you coffee, make your bed. Basically, like, all the same stuff you see in all your sci-fi novels, movies. That
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yes, it's coming.
Interesting. It is coming, but there's in the Indian context there is
Mine shall be
a lot
called
of
Chotu
cheap labor. Okay.
or
Please don't
Ramlal.
replace
Or
your
Ramlal.
actual Chotu with Chotu. That would suck. We need to create more
No,
employment,
actually, no. I
guys.
don't have a Chotu at home. I have a Ramlal at home, which is my Roomba.
Oh my God.
Roomba is called Ramlal.
Humanizing, humanizing technological objects. Cool, cool, cool. In
Yes.
other
What
news,
has happened? More serious business news.
okay, one second. Before we get into business, can we just please talk about how Trevor Noah, who like literally every single female I know has a giant crush on, is leaving the Daily Show? And as it turns out, apparently
Hmm.
he also just maybe dating Dua Lipa.
That second part is the more interesting news for me because I have like I'm a huge Dua Lipa fan of the music. Is how I put it.
Yes, of course,
Yes,
off the music.
of the
But getting
music.
into all things biz now, obviously the past 2 weeks have been and the conversations have been all around Amazon's sale and Flipkart's big billion days. And Misho obviously did this full-fledged marketing campaign around their like annual hero sale. And just running through a couple of quick numbers, Misho has apparently minted 20,000 Lakpati sellers in their 5-day festive sales, and they clocked over 3.34 crore of total orders as per Business Today. Flipkart's Big Billion Day 2022 sales apparently recorded 1.6 million users per second, and the sales in the first festive week is likely to touch 5.69 billion this year, which is pretty phenomenal. And of course, Redseer, which is this consulting number crunching agency, they predicted 11.8 billion worth GMV during the entire festive month. So a lot of money flowing through all things festive e-com pipes, man. Did you buy anything this festive season?
There was a random noise coming in because I was trying to find one specific article which I saw. Cleartrip is owned also by Flipkart.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was an interesting spread where there was an Amazon front page ad, and like taking over the whole front page. And the side of that was this small strip, which was Cleartrip kind of saying that all this money that you'd spend on buying stuff on this thing, this is how much discount you can kind of get for that for your holiday travel. Which is a great like kind of strategy, because literally you see the whole spread of the stuff you buy on Amazon. The side on whole thing, they're saying all that money, this discount. So I thought that was really interesting ambush campaign, because there's a lot of ambush campaigns that happen.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the ads, they all look the same. Like Flipkart's ad, Amazon's ad, they all like,
It's
this
the
is
same
all the stuff you
colors.
can buy.
There's like
It's a family
yellow,
safe, and you
orange,
can't
and
make a
purple.
difference.
Yeah.
So this was kind of like one of those things that kind of came out and this is interesting. Like kind of like it's an add-on, which was a nice change.
Yeah, but obviously, a couple of signs that are telling handset sales, so, your phone sales seem to have plateaued or are, growing fairly conservatively now. I think once more of these numbers are out, it would be interesting to see what are the categories driving, categories, subcategories, and the type of SKUs that are driving success, for each of these platforms, because so much within e-com is shifting and changing faster than we know. Fashion seems to have grown its share within all things e-com, whether it's, with
Yeah.
Flipkart, Meesho obviously focuses significantly on fashion. But yeah, listeners, stay posted on our hopeful extended coverage of all that sold this season during our festive sales.
As on the phones piece, I feel that's
Hmm.
a general trend across the board, because there hasn't been any like massive changes or this thing. So the phones are updating way too quickly now. Also, they
Yeah.
do like mid-year cycle changes. Like iPhone had like what last year it came out in September, October, but by March there was a new color variant which everybody kind of went. A lot of people bought that instead of buying the phone now.
Hmm.
I feel that's also kind of happening, is that the phone itself is now so iterative in the things they're adding on and changing, that apart from, okay, I don't have this color of phone, or maybe like the megapixels or whatever, the camera quality hasn't improved for me in like many years. So I feel
Yeah.
apart from that, people are upgrading for that reason. They're finding things like, say, like you mentioned, clothes and anything else. I feel that upgrade now has become more of a thing than just the tech.
Yeah, in fact, I was listening to Pivot earlier this morning, and don't quote me on this, guys. Just do a quick Google search. But apparently, Apple is also slowing down its production of iPhones because of
Mm.
slower demand from key countries for them. One of them being China. But that
Yeah.
seems to be obviously on the horizon. A couple of quick pieces of news. TikTok has launched its Be Real clone called TikTok now. Be Real is basically like touted to be this Instagram slash TikTok competitor, and as everyone does, launches a Me Too of the thing that could potentially eat their breakfast. I don't know if you saw this, but ONDC has finally opened up to the public in kicking off with Bangalore, and apparently launching in about 16 pin codes a couple of days ago. Seems interesting.
And this is going to be the next big one, right? After Aadhaar and UPI, this is the one to kind of watch, because it could entirely disrupt the whole way in which retail works, especially the broader level. But I know
Hmm.
you have some thoughts in terms of what could be the problem here.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the ripple effects of this are going to be felt by folks who are, focusing on quote unquote Kirana tech, because ONDC is like your number one sort of enabler, right? So on Twitter, in fact, there's this thread by a lady called Mugdha Warrior who writes for ET Prime. And she, sort of gave this example of a store called Ashirwad Home Needs that has, gone online, powered by ONDC. And just to read from her tweet, she says, this shop owner in Domlur fulfilled a 70 rupee order, 40 of which was
Hmm.
delivery fees, which was received through Paytm, and the logistics partner was, Loadshare. So, a lot of the narratives that became very popular in 2020, if you remember, where all these guys, Sequoia, Lightspeed, Axel, like poured money into platforms like OK Credit, Bikai, the other one, Dukan, which has that notorious, co-founders who keep
Mhm.
writing random things on Twitter.
Those really
Um,
outlandish Twitter threads, as I call them, in
yeah,
a nice
yeah.
way.
So
To say nicely.
y- you're being polite. I have more polite things to say, but maybe on another episode. No, so basically, I
Yeah.
think ONDC is going to become like a big leveler for all things Kirana tech, and I'm excited to see how this pans out, man, and how this plays out going forward.
So I know you have a bunch more stories in this our regular long introduction, but we've decided this week that since nothing really major has happened, that we're going to break some of these down and do them across the thing. We have a few things we're digging into a little more deeper. So in case you guys want to skip ahead to that, which I don't suggest you do because you'll miss some fun stuff, that might come in the segment after. But before we do that, we're going to take a break because Jealous Me has told us so that you guys take too long in segment one, take a break. So we shall take a break and come back with Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast, where I was just called a suck up because I listened to my producer. Last segment, we spoke about TikTok's Be Real clone. This is interesting, video that Janvi Kapoor put up, and I was intrigued to know what that was. She was promoting something called Social Home. They call it an exclusive social network. It's a
Yeah,
social network with
yeah.
only friends, only members, no like ads, etc. So this seems to be a thing, isn't? I mean, I don't know how many of them will survive this exclusivity and no ads, only your friends are here. That kind of vibe seems to be really coming back. It's
I
called a
think,
WhatsApp group for me, but
yeah, I think it's called Soho or some like
Soho,
lame.
Soho, yeah,
Yeah,
social home,
yeah.
which is short and Soho. There are too many Sohos around now, and
Yes, that is true. I don't know, man. I think my take on this is I think social media at large is dead. I think there used to be a point in time when people's curiosity was piqued by things that their friends were doing. But, obviously, because the internet has leveled the playing field, I don't need to, like, my friends aren't anymore a source of inspiration for me because I can find other source of inspiration no matter where I am. And that was TikTok's genius, right? TikTok
yeah,
challenged the idea of nodals being people who you know and people who you're connected with. And if you look at TikTok's
yeah,
algorithm, it just basically recommends based on, your taste preferences and obviously things that are popular on the platform. Pinterest is like the OG of this, right? There is
yeah.
literally no social graph. Everything is just based on taste preference and interest graphs. I don't think the killer of like quote unquote social media will be people trying to go back to like old school Facebook. I think that's stupid because WhatsApp is that, Telegram is
Orkut,
that. There
remember
are
Orkut?
Oh my God. And MySpace and High Five and all the other things
High
that
Five was the
existed back
best.
then. Yeah, I think the killer will be someone who can think of a newer way of, I won't even say connecting people, but like if the original graph was a social graph, TikTok's graph is an interest-based graph. What is the
Mm.
next graph that, comes out and creates new consumption patterns? But that would be, my take on this. So
Yeah, yeah,
nuanced.
for
Oh,
sure.
so nuanced. Well done,
So good.
Search. In any case, now that I'm done fawning over myself, company I'm most definitely fawning over is Uniqlo, which has turned
Mm.
profitable in less than 3 years in India, with close to about 400 crores sales in FY 21 to 22, up 63.8% from the previous year, and its profits stand at 21.4 crores. Now, in full disclosure, Uniqlo is an advertiser on LBB, and because we've tracked their journey, they are making 400 crores, bro. With guess how many stores?
How
Not
many?
more, not more than like five, I think.
What?
And
Mm.
literally, like in Delhi, they have a store in Vasankund, Saket, one in like Punjabi Bagh, Rajouri, that area. There's, two in Gurgaon. Like, I think that's about it. And very interestingly, when you hear of large MNC brands coming to India, the map that they follow is Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore in some sequence or order,
Mm.
right? Uniqlo's
Mm.
actually gone to Lucknow. I think recently, a couple of days ago, they opened in Chandigarh. So
Mm.
what's really interesting about Uniqlo is they've made like non-obvious bets in terms of where they're taking their stores. But 400
Super
CR,
interesting.
bro, out of five stores is pretty remarkable to say the least.
Yeah, and I don't think it's been a large push on e-com for them, right? Because their app is available, platforms there. It's I feel I mean that's one platform which I hope gets better because it sometimes gets a little confusing to use and
Yeah.
is hasn't been the greatest. I mean the products kind of come in, but it takes a little more navigating than you normally are used to kind of get stuff done on the app. But what I also felt was interesting is that it still feels a lot more premium. It doesn't feel fast fashiony as well. They figured that line of just kind of putting themselves out there
Yeah.
in a way that you don't suddenly feel like a mass fast fashion brand,
Hmm.
and kind of puts them apart from, let's say, an H&M, etc. Also, at least from a customer perception.
Yeah, yeah. And having worked with them, what I can tell you is, my God, Japanese just do it better. Like, I wish I had like another way of describing this, but they have like this crazy obsession with their brand,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen most other Indian, fashion houses have. So,
I'm just looking at the article, and
mm,
I've also noticed that they're actually pricing themselves 20% higher than Zara and H&M, which is super interesting, right? Because I've never seen the price difference as much, but I'm looking at it this way. I'm like, okay, that actually might actually be true, and but you do notice it's very smartly priced. It doesn't feel expensive. It's not like
yeah,
doesn't feel like, oh my god, I'm paying too much more than I
yeah.
should. So that's also an interesting one to look at.
Yeah, they have great genes, guys. They have great genes.
I
In
agree.
two last pieces of news at my end, I think one was obviously Reliance Retail has launched their quote unquote Zara competitor of sorts called Azorte. Don't you feel
Hmm.
Reliance Retail needs help with their names? Like everything just sounds so complex. You know what I mean? Tiara with their beauty competitor, and then Azorte going in some other
Azote.
direction. Yeah,
I like
but
Azote. It's got like a funky sound to it. I
we
just wanted to say funky.
this is why you are Sasta Hrithik Roshan, Varun. Because you like assorte, which is like French for assortment, butchered French for assortment. But in any case, I think this space is interesting because obviously, like in fashion there's two ends of the spectrum, right? I don't know if you remember good old Shein and Club Factory days,
Yeah.
but those
Yeah.
were your real Sasta tikao, like bikao fashion. But now a
Mm.
lot of new labels that are coming up, whether it's Zudio under the Tata umbrella or Azorte under the Reliance umbrella, everyone
Mm.
seems to be focusing on the premium segment more. Like I was watching this interview before our recording started, from the head of Reliance, the CEO of Reliance Retail, and he basically said that the assortment is in between 399 to 2000. So that seems to be
Mm.
a sweet spot for and Zudio is also priced more or less along the same lines, but lots happening in the premium segment, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. I also feel it's because at some level this segment has not seen as much focus and activity than as it is seeing now. And just from a relevance
Hmm.
standpoint, I feel people are looking to kind of have options in Reliance and kind of go for that retail experience. And I feel it's a great time. And honestly, I feel that Reliance does one thing really well. Apart from actually they do many things really well, but this one specific one which I genuinely like is they know exactly when to get into a segment, and they seem to be getting in right from a larger business strategy standpoint. So it's a great time for them to kind of like get into this space.
Yes, yes, yes. And last news from me is Pharrell Williams is selling off his legacy. He has just launched his company called Jupiter with a double O. And
Mm.
it's like this very like IRL take on NFTs, except it's about like letting go of ownership, but through like curated objects that whatever, like you guys can go check out JOOPITER. And also he gave this very Pharrell Williams sounding interview with the
Mm.
Financial Times, which is also worth a read. But there you go, Pharrell Williams.
There's also one more interesting piece, right? With piece, which is basically, I mean, the Pharrell Williams one seems like a very Pharrell Williams kind of thing to do. Pharrell Williams kind of things to do. If you want to talk like that, but go back to my call center voice. But excuse me, I used to work in a call center, you guys, at one point in time in my youth. But nevertheless, another new
Is
piece of
that
news
what
that
you say
really,
to make people think you're grounded, Varun?
yes,
I am
I
so
used to work in a call
grounded. I used to work at a call center, but I'm also, a rich AF right now. But my roots are humble, so there you go. I like the strategy of yours.
I fully accept free things all the time.
Yes, but getting back to your story.
Getting back to the story, this is actually a story you shared on our Think Fast Slack group, which is the whole Razorpay Poshwine acquisition, which I thought was an interesting one because this whole like loyalty solution piece is something which I've always had like I always thought is iffy. I don't know how much that really works, but this seems to be something that there's been a lot of action in this space, right, in recent times.
Yeah, yeah. I think I predicted this in December, and I'm so glad my predictions are shaping up well. But
देखो तुम भूल
we
गए स्टोरी मैंने मैंने याद दिलाया.
Thank you for telling Razorpay to buy posh wine and then getting Financial Express to write an article that shows up on my feed, which then I share, Varun. That's how we got to this story. But in any case,
Exactly.
I think there's way too much funding in all things fintech last year, and that consolidation had to happen. And obviously, like fintech is getting tough for everyone, right? Because you are growing on like, I mean, you're building a business on like 1-2% margins. So, and as happens with everything in India, everyone ends up going like omni channel at some level or the other. You saw it with Paytm. You're obviously seeing a Razorpay figure out its zone.
Mm,
Within that, Pine Labs is also, if I'm not mistaken, I think Pine Labs is also trying to, which is known for their POS systems, is trying to figure out what their digital play could potentially possibly be. But long story short, I think consolidation within fintech was bound to happen. I'm not an expert in this field, so I'm going to end my tippany on that. But
yeah,
fourth acquisition for Razorpay this
yeah.
year, just one small thing that I can say is there obviously is a big shakeup. Within fintech, because the largest fintech in India is getting like massacred on stock markets. And to be fair,
Mm,
it's not just them, it's like everyone and anyone under the
across
sun.
the board.
Given that their stock is down 60 to 70%, people who are valued at higher or close to Paytm right now are
Mm.
going to have to really, really, really prove their valuation, which, an acquisition's become an interesting way of driving that proof, so to speak.
Yeah, and this acquisition makes sense for Razorpay. I always look at certain companies think, and I know we say this a lot on the show. I think, is this a business or is this a feature? And at some point, if you are a broader, let's say, a fintech company, for you to be able to give this kind of a service to your consumers, kind of is a way for you to set it apart, create that experience for them, etc. So it makes sense for
Hmm.
them to have Poshwan as part of it. But I always looked at these individual companies which do this specific thing, saying how scalable is it for them individually. So it makes sense for both.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more action happening in this side of the fintech world. In other news, Netflix set up their internal game studio in Helsinki. It's led by a former Zynga general manager, which is super interesting because if you've seen the entire evolution of how entertainment and gaming kind of are colliding, you've had so many movies kind of come out and shows come out of games.
Yeah.
I feel at some point the flip is starting to happen, especially with Netflix, where and even Star Wars, and they're doing a
Hmm.
great job with their games. If you've played any of their games, is this whole thing that storytelling is such an integral part of the gaming space today that it's great to kind of see this happening with someone like a Netflix because they can kind of go small with their games, they can
Yeah.
go massive with their games as well. So I'm super interested to see how this kind of scales up.
Yes, Queen. And I think last, well, technically not a part of our introduction, but, a
We're in
segment
our
that I
second
love,
segment.
our first mini segment is, so I want to pick your brain on all things South cinema. What is
Hmm.
happening, where is this resurgence come from? And also, obviously this conversation came up because of Vikram Vedha, if you can just, yeah, which is a Tamil film, right?
But we'll tap into all of this because Jalasmi said to take another break. So we'll take that
Oh,
break and
one
come
more
back
break.
and tap into South cinema. Yes, we have crossed the duration. Tell me, Jalasmi, is that right or wrong? Am I being enough of a producer pleaser today?
What a
Okay, we'll
setup,
take a break.
man.
We'll
Guys,
take a break
this
and be
is why
back with
everyone
Think
loves
Fast.
Varun more. See you on the other side.
Welcome back to Think Fast. We're digging into all things South cinema. So it's interesting that you mentioned the South, right? And for the longest time, when you spoke about Indian cinema, for some reason, globally, you'd always talk about Bollywood and what's happening out of Bombay, and
Hmm.
that's really changed. I feel Bahubali was a bit of an inflection point for that to happen because that movie was start things off. Then you had KGF kind of coming in and becoming the monster that it is,
Hmm.
and then slowly you have all these movies coming. I feel two things coincided. If you look at the broader cinema space, is that the Bombay film industry works very differently from how the South works. If you
Hmm.
go to how production functions, in let's say Chennai, in Hyderabad, even in Bangalore, and across Kerala as well, is that it's built like an ecosystem that is not just driven by while it's driven by stardom. It's got like the ecosystem functions in a far more structured manner where it's driven by okay how much money can the movie make, the
Hmm.
economics of how much let's say actors charge isn't as high as it is in Bollywood, for instance, what ended up happening was a lot of the actors start charging so much money and taking so much share of profit that you have to kind of, the budget went up just with that. And so the
Yeah.
focus of the money went there, not as much on the scripts, to be honest. And even the scripts, and not as much on creating grand experiences.
Hmm.
Versus what the South has always done very interestingly is it taps into very base level sentiment, right? I would say I won't even call it mass sentiment, because I think mass can be a very misconstrued way to
Yeah.
look at the business. Is the fact that everybody will watch this movie for the same thing. You're in a theater, you go in as, as a family along with friends, etc., and you've seen this experience that feels like something you need to do in the theater. So things are louder, the background music is built
Hmm.
for that. You'll have like outlandish visual effects, etc. And that's been amped up a lot without losing what is innately, I would say, a cultural connection. So it's very
Hmm.
innately still a Telugu movie. It's innately still a Tamil movie. There's been a connection to folklore. So you generally can connect most movies to some form of folklore, some form of like hero's journey, which is very innately from that region. And at some point, Bollywood lost that. I feel
Yeah.
Bollywood, especially over the last decade, kind of lost that. Tried to be too, and not like it shouldn't be. Tried to be too international. Tried to kind of, one end was international, one end was too commercial, and commercial meant that you just kind of started hamming stuff out, and that's why this business went down, and that kind of came up. But more than anything else, it's been sheer technical growth. Like the kind of
Hmm.
stuff that is being visually done, being cinematically done down south is something now, for instance, like, even like a Brahmastra, right? Is that this be the first example where Bollywood's actually pushed the envelope after a long time. Many problems with it, from like, I think dialogues were the biggest weird part of Brahmastra, but it's finally a step in that direction because audiences have changed. And I know this is a long point that I'm kind of making because I want to get your thoughts from a broader sense. Is that audiences are saying, can I just wait for like a few weeks and watch this on OTT versus actually going into a theater? So that's also kind of changed the economics. So there's a lot happening across the board, but it's finally become a level playing field, and it's become a scene where OTTs rather have also had a role to play in bringing South cinema onto their platform, and suddenly people are watching it and enjoying it and seeing that the
Hmm.
stories have been a lot more worked on. Sorry, my long explanation of this industry dynamic is done. Your
No, so I
points.
have a couple of follow-on questions for you, right? So if we had to look at the business of entertainment, so you, for example, you mentioned how like Bahubali was a big breakthrough movie, right? Like, are there
Yeah.
people who are, and with my limited knowledge even of Bollywood, like, like the same way there's like a Rohit Shetty and Karan Johar
Mm.
who apparently like, there's Dharma films or whatever else who apparently like rule
Yeah.
the roost. Is there an equivalent of that, with South cinema as well? And where did something like a Bahubali, come from?
So there is that. There are a bunch of studios. A lot of these, especially let's say the Telugu industry, right? Telugu industry is largely family driven.
Hmm.
Same families have been making movies, producers, actors, all kind of come from the same ones. A large chunk of that is it's. I mean, if you're talking about family business run film industry, Telugu industry is right up there with that. The Tamil one has always been a lot more technically driven. So you'll have like a
Hmm.
Maniratna movie kind of coming out. You're going to have a Shankar movie coming out, and you'll have that kind of a vibe. Malayalam cinema has always been supremely story driven. Right? They make
Hmm.
the most interesting stories, like the best stories of all Indian cinema. If somebody has issues, I'm going to get on Twitter. I would say arguably come from Malayalam cinema because they
Like, give
write
me
the
an
best
example.
stories.
What's an example of a great Malayalam movie?
To think of one which I heard about recently, which I thought was super interesting, because I had Karthik Srinivasan on Advertising Is Dead, and he spoke about it. And I'm trying to remember that story because it was
Jalashmi's give me a
super.
couple of names. Kumbalangi Nights.
Kumbhangi
Great Indian
Nights, Great
Kitchen.
Indian Kitchen, correct. Actually, basically, I would say look for any Fahad Fazil movie and you'll see a great story there, is how I would put it.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to remember. Jalashmi going for it. Bangalore Days. Yes, go on, Jalashmi, go on. She's giving us lots of things here. Actually, I even really liked Minnal Murli, which was on Netflix, which was really fun because it's an interesting take on. Someone's going to kill me if that is not a Malayalam movie. But I think, as much as I remember, it was because I watched most of these with subtitles. Yes, correct. It is a Malayalam movie. Phew, dodged a bullet there. But it's an
That's
interesting
right.
take on a superhero movie. Minnal
Yeah.
Murli. It's on Netflix. You should check it out. It's really fun to watch. But a lot of them are so like, and there was like, for instance, there's a Telugu movie that was produced by Rajan DK who made Family Man, which I really liked, which was about this auto driver who suddenly discovers that someone who was on his auto left their camera behind, and he
Okay.
decides, instead of selling it, his friend is a guy who shoots wedding videos, and they say, okay,
Hmm.
maybe we can make a movie and sell it for a lot of money. They decide to use the people in their village to make a movie, and all the people they use in actuality are not actors. They just literally use people from a village, and this movie is so
Yeah.
much fun to watch. But that's an interesting story, right? You're not watching
Yeah.
it for action, this thing and all that stuff. So there's a lot of that happening as well. So
Yeah.
there is an industry driving it. There also seems to
Hmm.
be a lot of opportunity for disruption. But I feel the big change has been the South knows how to create extravaganza. Like
Hmm.
you can walk into like even a Vikram Veda, which is basically taken from the Vikram Betal story from folklore, and the
Yeah.
rendition of that. There's a Tamil version of it, which had Madhavan and Vijay Sethupathi, and now there's a Hindi version, same directors, which is Hrithik and Saif Ali Khan, and it's literally taking that and spinning old folklore for today's times, which is great because there's a
Oh,
connection.
interesting.
And even like Ponniyin Selvan, which I don't have pronounced right or not, again goes back to the Cholas, the Chola Empire, etc., and kind of building,
Hmm.
and Maniratnam's making the movie in that space. So you're kind of tapping into like source material which is innately Indian. I remember
And
Chad had
understood
long back.
commonly. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a chat long back with Rana Daggubati, and I remember that he said something super interesting. He said the reason why we don't need a Marvel and a DC in India is because our source material is our mythology.
Yeah.
We already
Yeah.
have that. We don't need to create that. The West, in many ways, America had to create that because they didn't have that source material. So the
Hmm.
Mahabharata for us, or the Ramayana, or even the story of Cholas, etc. These are all like even RRR is a
Hmm.
reimagination of the freedom struggle if our freedom fighters had like superpowers, for instance, because they literally
Yeah.
are like
Yeah.
superheroes.
A
Which
very
is why that movie is
exaggerated re-dramatization.
and it's done well in the US. People have
Yeah.
gone
Yeah.
nuts in Hollywood behind RRR, and I can see why,
Hmm.
because it is insane what Rajamouli can think of, right? So I can
Yeah.
go on a total this thing, but it's just the mindset. Saying what
Yeah.
story, what extravaganza will get people to see, I want to watch this in the theater, I want to watch this again and again, versus taking away the commercial factors. Okay, this actor will only do this, or this will only fit in like this kind of a song. I think we had a lot of that happening here
Yeah.
that I feel is going to change because they're seeing how literally the South industries have taken over.
Yeah.
They are the biggest stars now. They are getting a lot more of attention now. So it is going to change. I
Yeah.
think Vikram Vedha is also, from what I hear, has been created really well, getting great reviews. I'm watching it
Hmm.
tomorrow, and I've heard like it's like on point. It's not the exact one they made in Tamil. They've
Hmm.
changed a few things, but it's been created exactly with that same kind of mindset.
Yeah. So one last question over here, before
Mhm.
we get on to our next story. But obviously, one big consequence of this, which we saw happen on the likes of like Coffee with Karan, is how the nature of like the Indian superstar has also changed from your usual suspects of like Salman Khan,
Yeah,
Amir Khan, and the likes, to, for
yeah.
instance, like Allu Arjun or Rashmika Mandana, who've always been popular and enjoyed their popularity, but within the South, right? Like your national level stars were always your Bollywood actors, but
Yeah.
obviously now these stars aren't just popular within their regions. They are gaining popularity in every single pocket of India, from Surat to, apparently, according to the story that we're reading off of, Allu Arjun was at the Golden Temple and was quickly and instantly
Mhm.
recognized. So two quick things over here. What do you think is going to be like the dynamic of Bollywood slash theater celebrity led influence? And the second is, whatever happens to Bollywood stars now, do they migrate to American shores, find new ways of earning money, or do you know what I mean? Like what
Yeah.
happens to the status quo?
I don't think there are a bunch of things already changing. If you talk to people across the industry, especially in Bombay, you can see there's a bit of worry, right? There's been worry for
Hmm.
a while. It was panic plus worry in many ways. I think Brahmastra kind of helped kind of calm that down a little bit, but it's a sign. If you look at Vikram Vedha, look at this, is that all industries go through cycles. I feel this is a
Yeah.
call out for Bollywood saying that being massy doesn't mean being cliche. And at some point, all massy movies, apart from a Rohit Shetty movie, became very cliched and
Hmm.
became very like, okay, this seems like more of the same thing. And
Hmm.
mass means we kind of are like appealing universally. And
Hmm.
that's happened in Hollywood as well. It's not just an Indian phenomena. In Hollywood, a Top Gun has worked, right? The
Yeah.
Marvel ones are working. But if you look at like let's say a movie that is more script driven, that isn't working as much in theaters anymore. So that's a
Hmm.
universal that's happened. What I feel is going to happen in Bollywood with this entire mixture is now we have Indian cinema. Look at a
Hmm.
Brahmastra, it had Nagarjuna in it in a key role that kind of helped to some level with a broader audience space. You are going to have worlds merge. You have, which is the next Prabhas movie, which is Prabhas was Bahubali, which is called Adipurush, being directed
Hmm.
by the guy who made Tanaji, which again did really well when it kind of came out. So you have worlds kind of merging here. where I feel you're going to make cinema, big scale cinema for theaters. I feel is going to be driven by that. And you finally have a bunch of actors who are from the South who have universal appeal, who people will go watch. And on the
Hmm.
other end of the spectrum, you will have, I feel, this is my gut because I'm a huge fan. Next year, we'll see Bollywood get back onto the mass train in a different way because you have some of the, I would say, the old guns coming back with some very interesting movies. So Shah Rukh coming back, and I'm always like, Shah Rukh will come back, status quo will be back to normal
Yeah.
because I feel that Pathan's going to be massive. You
Hmm.
have Hrithik and after War was a good example of doing mass, right? And now there's Fighter coming out, and he has a few other movies coming out as well. So you're going to
Yeah.
have some of these guys come back with their next set of movies. I know Amir's one didn't work, but again, that was more. I felt it was more an OTT movie. Maybe it wasn't marketed right, but I feel in the larger sense, you have Bollywood or come in level. I feel you'll have massy movies, and
Hmm.
those will be theater. You will have more script driven stuff which will happen on OTT, like Alia Bhatt's movie, which is Darlings, which is fabulous, but
Yeah.
when straight to Netflix. So you're going to do that mixture. Eventually, it'll be the script that will win. The audience wants
Yeah.
good stories. They're not going to be bought by fluff anymore. They're not going to be just be bought by an actor. So remunerations might shift around a little bit in terms of how money
Hmm.
structures work in movies, which is I think it's what time that happens. But the OTT has literally leveled the playing field. The release pattern
Hmm.
has changed, all of that stuff. So I feel that's the big game changer here. People want good stories. They don't care what language it's in. They'll just watch it dubbed in Hindi, and
Yeah.
if it's a movie made in another language.
Oh my God, I thoroughly enjoyed that outburst of love for all things cinema and theater, which I know
Yes,
absolutely nothing about.
I'm South Indian. Like so that's like for clarity for anybody else.
Yes, we could tell. But
Yes.
what's it called? I think there's a lot that we guys can, learn from this. And I think if you're in marketing, brand building, anything consumer, you need to be on the pulse of where consumption is going. Hence my interest in this, general
Yeah.
industry
Yeah.
category. And obviously, OTT is seeing a big shake up now, right? I don't know if you saw, but like Apple has nixed their deal with Oprah Winfrey.
Mm.
You're obviously seeing major like cost cutting, etc., happen
Yeah.
on the OTT front. So let's see how long this democratization lasts. But last story for the day, it is time for.
I think we do one more story and then go in for break. Jalasmi, will you let us? Today seems to be asking Jalasmi, do you take a break or not throughout the episode? But break le lete hain, theek hai? Jalasmi ne bola break le lete hain. She is the new character, ever-present character on this episode. So we will take a break and be right back with diamonds, jewelry, lots of things after this break. Welcome back to Think Fast, where I do not know anything about carrots. And is Caratlane sell is a vegetable seller, right? I'm just like clarifying, Suchita.
Yes. Now let's see how far the story goes. Oh my God. King of dad jokes is back. He has been
Yes.
resurrected
Yes,
after
Queen.
his. Yes, yeah, no, but basically, this story is about all things Caratlane, which is a Tata unicorn, as the headline says. And obviously, the story is from a publication that we love referring to called the Cap Table because they are no
Mm,
masala, only straight up facts and information. But basically, ladies and gents, while we do end up covering a lot of like tech startups and consumer brands and the likes, and more new age consumer brands, I do think how to build a business genuinely comes from your old school businesses like Tata, Reliance. So, ladies and gents, this story is pretty straight up and simple, which is, Caratlane was started by two co-founders, one of whose name is right here, Mithun Sacheti. And,
mm,
obviously they started out with a fairly simple mission of making it easy for the Indian woman to wear jewelry that was more everyday. We'll get into a little bit of the backstory in just a bit. They built their business ground up. Their focus largely was e-com first. They raised money from Tiger Global in 2015, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. They raised money from Tiger Global a while ago, but in May of 2016, the Tata Group owned Titan acquired Tiger Global's entire 62% stake within
mm,
Caratlane at about 357 crores. And, when you look at the numbers today and just fast forwarding to the climax of the story, which is the quarter that ended June 2022, was the online jeweler's best quarter ever with revenues soaring over 200% to 483 crores.
mm.
That is more revenue in a quarter than it made for the entire year that ended in March 2019. And the company also reported reported a profit before tax of rupees close to about 27 crores for the quarter. So I think the great sort of, like narrative over here, or at least my big takeaway was founders found an interesting segment, raised money, were slightly overvalued at the time that they were bought by the Tata, by Titan more specifically, have obviously really rejigged and reimagined their business and today are crushing it, man.
Yeah.
So jokes aside, what is your take on this vegetable business called Caratlane?
It's super interesting that they're larger than Titan's eyewear business, which is
Yeah,
which is what broader category. And India's always been a great. I mean, I would say it's one of the biggest markets for jewelry, right? I mean, what we don't discuss enough is how big the jewelry market in India is. And it's
yeah.
such a. I feel at some level this is a great example of an acquisition happening in this space and them really scaling the way they have. So there's obviously something that gone right in just how they've been integrated into the system and how they've been able to grow.
Mhm.
I also feel they've taken this entire aspect and more people to a way of almost buying. And I know Caratlane. What I don't know if the article covers is how much of their business is e-com and how much is in store,
40%.
which
So
is
e-com is
which is super
40%.
interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you won't imagine jewelry to be bought online as much. I
Mm.
mean, at least when this segment kind of opened up, and I feel that's been the big game changer for me to kind of understand is that what you would worry about. I mean, how do you even think about that kind of coming to you on time? Is it going to be the right this thing, the value to it? So I feel that that could have been one of the big um, factors for how they've grown. I can be totally wrong here, but that's what really kind of caught my eye when I looked at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
story.
So I think a lot of things. So first and foremost, I love their positioning, which isn't only unique to them, but it's also true of, say, for example, like a Bluestone to some extent,
Hmm.
and then of course you've got Mia by Tanishq that plays in a similar sort of like lens and category. So basically, if you look at the jewelry market, right, it's been governed by your occasion purchases, which is basically Shadi aa rahi hai, Karwa Chauth, whatever, like your Hindu calendar and your wedding calendar purchases. That's largely that's largely the back on which the jewelry business at large has been built. I think the
Hmm.
thesis, which wasn't only original to Carrot Lane, but a couple of other players that started at more or less the same amount of time, is that the Indian customer, and you see this playing out in data as well, the Indian customer is not willing to compromise on. Is not going to buy sasta tikau jewelry at premium prices. So, for those of you who are like on Instagram and get targeted by ads left, right, and center, you'll see a lot of jewelry brands that basically sell base metal gold or silver plated jewelry for exorbitant prices, right? 8,000, 10,000, and the likes. Um, Carrot Lane, Bluestone, and Mia by Tanishq, a large part of their bet was that, the Indian female consumer wants to wear more quote unquote everyday jewelry. She doesn't want to wait for a
Hmm.
special occasion to wear her jewelry. But she's not willing to compromise on the quality and the authenticity of her jewelry. She's not willing to piss away, 10,000 rupees just for cool design. She wants the jewelry to be, gold, silver, diamond, semi precious stones, so on and so forth, because the Indian mentality is jewelry should have some amount of inherent like resale value, right? It should be an
Hmm.
asset. It shouldn't be some dumb shit that I bought off the internet that I don't care if I don't wear it tomorrow, or whatever else. So I think this was a niche that they found. I think the other thing, I was reading this case study made by some IIM Raipur students, which I had found on Google. And again, you guys can do a quick Google search of Carrot Lane business model, and you'll see a couple of interesting documents sort of show up. But I think the consumer value proposition, apart from what you said of uh, uh, you know uh, great quality stones being more omni-channel, so on and so forth. I think one has been, from whatever I read online, it seems like they quote unquote own a large part of the supply chain. So it's not
Hmm.
like they are a marketplace where they are reselling jewelry items that have been designed or made by other manufacturers. It seems like a lot of their design is in-house. A lot of their even stones, so whether it's diamonds or whatever else, a lot of it is owned by them. So it's very similar to Lenskart, right? Like you own the full stack of the supply
Yeah.
chain, and because you own the stack of everything that goes into making that piece of jewelry, everything from like your margin structures to your resale structures, your selling structures, all of that just becomes better. And when you take the stack of that, right, top to bottom ownership of how your product is made, and then you add that crazy adrenaline of both offline as well as online, this seems to generally be the formula that hasn't just worked for Caratlane, but it's worked for everyone from Lenskart to even your innerwear brands like Clovia, Enamor, and the likes.
Mm.
Everyone sort of owns top to bottom and then distributes the products, wherever they can. So just strategically, it seems like post the Tanishq acquisition, they seem to have made some major changes in the way they think about their business, which is showing in their numbers, man.
Yeah, and I'm correcting myself because I was running through the capital article. Is what actually helped them grow was they moved into retail stores a lot faster than the other players in the same space.
Yeah.
While they were primarily only e-com initially, and they tried to do this whole try at home piece, which they couldn't scale up. They said we have to do retail stores, and that's when the whole kind of deal with Titan really kind of happened. And they've been able to scale a lot. One, because of the point you just made about just kind of owning the entire chain and
Hmm.
really controlling all of that. But secondly, they went to omni-channel a lot faster than everybody else did, and that kind of helped
Yeah.
them scale and grow. And now they're the number two brand behind Tanishq, which is fabulous, right? Just look at that kind of a story. It's always good to see.
But it's a really good compliment. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah,
you take on the original thesis of like if Tanishq is where you go for your occasion-based jewelry, Carrot Lane becomes a very good complement to exactly that. And
yeah.
I don't know if this was said publicly or not, but I remember this was said on a in a closed group panel discussion that I was a part of, where Vinita Singh, the CEO of Sugar Cosmetics, I
Mm-hmm.
think one of her mentors or whatever is Mithun Sacheti, right? And like if you look at any brand that has crushed in India, retail is a very, very,
Agreed.
very strong part of their
Agreed.
DNA. And I'm obviously referring to like consumer brands. So
Yeah.
and just if you look at Sugar's trajectory, right, done exactly the same thing, own top to bottom of supply chain, gone omni-channel. Sugar, in fact, has gone omni-channel much more aggressively than any of their competitors or counterparts, which obviously brings us back to what is good glam up to. Similar to how you have so much love for all things South cinema, this whole space of consumer brands. Evidently excites me a lot, but the formula seems to be more or less the same across
Yeah.
all your top
Yes.
performers.
Yes. That brings us to the end of this segment and this show. But what is the end of the show? We're going to come back right after this for our recommendations. We'll do that right after this break. Welcome back to Think Fast. We're doing recommendations. I'm recommending having a good hair day, but apart from that, what are you recommending?
You should recommend a shampoo and a conditioner brand, Varun. But what am I recommending? I am finding my mojo again, man. As you can tell from my excitement on this podcast. But I've gone back to listening to a lot of podcasts, and obviously I cannot not recommend On with Kara Swisher. So On is her
Mm,
new podcast. She's like the queen of all things business and tech
yeah.
podcasts, and she sort of I think ended her contract with the New York Times where she ran a podcast called Sway, and a lot of
Mm,
the similar sort of narrative conversations are percolating into this new podcast called On with Kara
mm,
Swisher, and her producer Naima Raza does a very good job of front ending and back ending each of the episodes just with some context. For those of you who love international pop culture and all things international news, which I'm a sucker for, her interview with
mm.
Chris Cuomo is like class act. That lady knows how to get answers out of people. So if you love a good interview, are generally a fan of Kara Swisher, check this out.
Actually, just an add-on to the Kara Swisher one. This was the last record conference she did as the one driving it. There's a very good chat she had with the ex CEO of Walt Disney, Bob Iger. Definitely
Yeah.
worth a watch. It's on YouTube. You'll find it there. You'll find it on her podcast as well. On Pivot rather, you'll find it. Great watch, listen. And just like and also because he's no longer chairman, CEO, all that stuff. So he's kind of like no holds
He's
barred out there talking
chilling.
about stuff. He's
Yeah,
full
yeah,
chilling.
he's so checked
He
out.
looks
It's
like a chilling. He had
amazing.
a stubble in arm. Like I've never seen Bob Iger with a stubble. He had a stubble,
Oh
which is
man.
quite cool.
Yes.
My recommendation is a new book I just started reading. It's called Discipline is Destiny. Ryan Holiday is arguably one of my favorite authors, creators, everything else. So it's a good one. It's something which I've been digging into lately. I've been a Stoicism learner for a few years now, but this book is actually very interesting. It's self-control and discipline is what I'm learning from it, which I might need a lot more of in life.
Especially with your dad jokes. Self-control and discipline is needed there.
Yes, Quinn, yes.
And with that, toodles my poodles.
Toodles my poodles. We're finishing this before 1 hour hits. This is one of our most tight episodes. Please let us know what you think about this. You can tweet at us. You can throw stuff at us. Only online, not in person.
And give us some love, guys. It's what keeps us going. Otherwise,
to the people who came up to me at Meta's Creator Day.
Yes.
Who came up and said selfies saying "Yes, Queen." Thank you for that. We shall get Suchita down for some of these as well, and pop by and we can do selfies.
Oh my god! Bye guys.
Bye guys.
See you later.